What's going on, y'all? This is Amir, sending lots of love from my home and my place in the world here in Eretz Israel to all y'all, wherever you may be. This is my opportunity to shout out and share and speak about things going on here in the Holy Land that are worth speaking about. Ideas that are worth elevating, consciousness and awareness, and the ability for us as human beings to thrive and be alive here in a place that is jacked up with lots of energy. Right now, that's war energy, but in good years and good times that I've known here living in Israel, there are moments of brightness and glory and power and faith and humanity and wonder that are beautiful, if not for better words that can describe such a phenomenon that is rippling and vibrating here in the Holy Land in good times. My cousins are not having a good time, but the possibility for them to be part of this experience the way Arab Israelis are in Israel today. My evil, hateful, Hamasnik cousins need to realize that their fate is better off with the Jewish people and not fighting in our faces. Humanity has done a dance in which we have turned a relatively minor issue with a whole lot of grandiosity and offense and suffering and victimhood that's attached to Palestine, which has been embellished and exaggerated and extrapolated in a way that doesn't properly acknowledge for its own fault in its fate the suffering and the wailing and whining and bombing and horrors that we're inflicting upon each other as a result. Here, 75 years later, in which Israel is a thriving state and Palestine is a thriving cause. And the state issue is no longer the matter, it's more about the cause. Some of you have gone crusading in your wisdom of inhumanity against Jews again, and against this minor issue of the world of Israel and Palestine, because whether you like it or not, the Jews came back and managed to do what a indigenous population that has maintained a healthy relationship with its homeland has never done, and we did it. And it's an embarrassment, it's a slight, it's the Arab ego that can't handle the injustice of having lost a war to Jews in their own homeland ancestrally, where everyone knows my people have existed throughout the ages. Yes, we came back in more numbers recently. Yes, there were displaced populations because of that. Yes, we drained swamps and grew this land and invested heart and soul and malaria suffering and hardship in order to help this place grow. Yes, my people worked the land and grew the land and built the land, and when the Arabs were not willing to share the land because they made it perfectly clear with the mob and the riots and the putsch and the coups and the attacks and the rapes that you've done to my people since the beginning, you've never not burned and killed Jews, whether in the Middle East or in Europe. So don't tell me this shit started because of the occupation. Be honest with ourselves, people. There is something about Jews that you Christians and Muslims both have an issue with us. And history has validated that very simple fact. So take the issue in the first place, because we also need to be able to acknowledge the whole picture. No, October 7th obviously did not happen in a bubble, and Israel did not happen in a bubble, and wars won, and economies built, and nations risen, that the Jewish people from the ashes have risen. And the people who from North Africa, 800,000 Jews that you Arabs kicked out of our homes from Morocco to Iraq and burned and hung us in the streets and persecuted and raped your way into Jewish wealth and power and communities that existed for thousands of years, that you destroyed with the brushstroke because you were slighted by a loss to Jews in Palestine. What you have done to this slightly serious scenario that was the war that was lost in a couple 100,000 Palestinian refugees has turned into a catastrophe. It is shameful. It is sad. It is a soap opera, my friends. Think about this for a second. It's so unbelievably tragic, but I want to take you on a tale, and I want to tell you a story that is blended together between the different forces and energies from the east and the west. But when Ishmael and Isaac separated the sons of Abraham, and their time to face off against one another in a binary kind of a cosmic relationship, the small descendants of Isaac and the Israelites, and my Ishmaelite Arabian cousins, and you, like Ishmael, being wild as an ass, as the Bible once said, are a rowdy bunch. And I am not exactly impressed with my cousins. The societies you have built are not so impressive. And you need to calm down and stop fighting some glory war against your cousins Isaac, because the Jewish people have returned to the Judean lands. And the world would be better to acknowledge that there is both tragedy for those who weep and cry and mourn and wail for Palestine, what they've done, what they want, where they envision a future, versus what they think they are entitled to because of losing a war back in 48 and 67 and 73. And so, my cousins, you bang your heads against the wall and you scream bloody murder for Palestine and rip out your hair in anguish and sorrow from an issue that the Arabs created in part, that the international community created in part, that the Jews created in part, and that the Palestinian people and their poor leadership created in part. From the beginning, Palestinian Nashashibis were outranked by the killers, the Husseinis, the more bloodthirsty, willing to do terrorist type of Arabians who, within their community, fought and killed those willing to compromise. And that is on them. From Haj Amin al-Husseini and his clan of bandit brothers and robbers and extortionists and harassers and bullies and thugs. You are thuggish men. Your leadership was dominated by thuggish men. While one people built the nation, and my nation is built. And we are here. Whether you like it or not, we have institutions and tax authorities and parking meters, and leave me alone. My nation lives, and the Jewish people have come back to Israel to live. The Arabs, having lost many wars, and having divided themselves and humiliated themselves and not managed to do very much more than extort petrochemicals from the earth and enrich themselves in a glorified bath of oil and wealth and criminality and thuggery and Wahhabi, shameful regional dynamics that the Palestinian people are caught into and the Judean people are caught into and the oil wealth is caught into, and it's all connected in this cosmic game where we need to step back a little bit from the frickin' match that lights the oil, that inflames the Middle East, that turns what should have been a very simple, small repopulation of refugees who had to be told the honest truth that sometimes when you lose in war, you are driven out. And there's heartfelt sorrow that should be felt for those in Ramla and Lod who were expelled at the end of the war on behalf of the Israelis. And there are those who fled before the war who became refugees, and their circumstances maybe are different, but nonetheless, they find themselves no longer living in the boundaries of the nation that I call home, Israel. And that's a reality. They should be incentivized to live where they are. There are people living here who should be allowed to live peacefully here. There's no reason that my army should have to waste our efforts running into refugee camps and running into Jenin in order to take out terrorists in the first place. You should let your boys be builders and salesmen and merchants and traders and caravanners like once upon a time, or do whatever you want to do with your lives, but stop wasting your energy with your jihadi glory, dying on the cross like the frickin' Crusades because you feel the Jews living in Judea is an offense to Islam. Shame on you for having a bankrupt ideology that allows you to even think that that is such a slight that doesn't allow you to then make the progress as a society that your people deserve in the first place. The Arabians have better things to do with that oil money than waste it fighting me for Palestine. Let the Jews live. Let the Palestinians live. And let's live in a region that doesn't always have a match nearly lit in order for progress to be hindered and inhibited when it could be the glory of the region and the wadi oasis of the region and the world. Let our deserts flourish with Israeli water technology from Tehran all the way to Riyadh and then back to Tel Aviv. Let my brains and broad and might and glory allow my little nation to live amidst the Arabians and the Turks with a little bit of honor. As a Jew, I come from the East and from the West, and you treat us like Western colonial settlers. Shame on you for not knowing your own history and where the Jewish people have always lived. We fought with armies in Arabia, we fought with and against the Muslims, and remember that we also were part of the Islamic experience, theologically, emotionally, and inspirationally. So don't tell me as a good Muslim that the Jews don't have a place in the region. Shame on you. Shame on your lack of vision and courage and insight and wisdom of what Islam should look upon the Jewish people, because there are plenty of favorable passages in the Quran and the Hadith on our behalf, not just kafir. Do not just fear us and hate us and gnash your teeth at me because I am a Jew living in my Judean land. Shame on you for being a poor Muslim, to kill women and children, to think that that is honor in jihad. That is a bankruptcy of a beautiful tradition and culture. Let Sufis speak again, not just the Salafis. I wish my cousins well, because Arabia deserves better, and Arabian women deserve better, and the growth and potential of Arabian society should not have to martyr itself. That deserves a smaller piece of the pie, if any piece of the pie of Palestine is ever to be put in place and defined and then settled, because that oil wealth is going to have to pay for it. And accepting a smaller piece of the pie for having made the bad choices and lost the wars and being the inferior, antithetical. Maybe you have a claim to indigeneity. Maybe that claim goes back multiple generations, but mine is stronger and older and longer, and we have been coming and going from Judea since the very beginning, well before you even came up with these fancy intellectual terms like settler, colonial. It's boring to listen to, it's lacking nuance and content, and a few indigenous Palestinian Arabs who are beautiful people were driven from their lands, and that's sad. That is a tragedy. But what you have turned it into is a full-blown catastrophe. And the majority of that is not on the Jewish people for fulfilling our own national aspirations. Remember that, please, and let's sit at the table instead of marching the streets like a bunch of foolish children, thinking that's gonna solve and sway. Shame on you for turning and aggrandizing a minute issue that could have easily not been turned into this catastrophic, God forbid the Jews have a homeland, melodrama. Shame on all of us for dramatizing, and shame on all of us for allowing this Ishmael-Isaac fight to turn on its head once again and reincarnate itself in this current political arena. Let's step back and let's turn on microphones and let's sit down for coffee and let's smoke shisha and let's remember, Arabia, that the Jews in Judea aren't the white devils you want to call us. The Jews in Judea are refugees from being expelled from Morocco, Tunisia, Algeria, Libya, North Africa, and the Middle East. We are brown, we are black, we are gray, we are tired of your bullshit. It's enough. Khalas, tahadiyya. It's not worth the fight anymore. Learn that, figure that out, and then I don't have to build up my army to be strong and cruel when it's time to smack you down and put you in your place because you think rockets are cute. Learn the Jews are here to stay, and we will make room for the Palestinians. Inshallah.